Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all enjoying the SCL conference. Personally, I've been impressed by the quality of the presentation yesterday and today, so I hope I will be able to maintain these standards. We don't have much time to talk about the vast and complex topic that is sustainability in the supply chain, so I will try to keep it top line. I also understand I'm the last man standing between you and the lunch, so I'll try to keep you engaged. About me, my name is Raphaël Tocan, Head of Supply Chain for Lactalis, Nestle, Chilled Dairy. And 1 year ago, I was given the mission to lead the CSR team at LNCD. So I'm part of the big group setting a global strategy, and my role is to make this strategy relevant and bring it to life for the people working in my business. So what we're going to talk about today is global warming. I think it's important that all of us understand what we're talking about. Then we'll talk about sustainability in the supply chain, why it is not negotiable. Then we'll talk about carbon footprint, okay, to understand where it's coming from and how to measure it, how can we influence it. We'll talk then about targets, the importance of setting right targets, realistic targets, and strategic goals. And last but not least, we'll talk about organizational change. How can we drive actions at all levels in the organizations? So I can recognize few familiar faces in the audience, but I don't know the majority of you. So I don't know your knowledge on this topic. So I'm going to start with a little quiz. Nothing fancy, no QR codes, no mobile phone. You can just vote with your fingers to the questions I'm going to ask. So do you know what is the primary greenhouse gas contributing to global warming? Is it carbon dioxide, methane, or nitrous dioxide? Go on. Raise your hand, vote. What's your best guess? Okay, so I think most of you are right, it's carbon dioxide. So when we talk about greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide represents 3/4 of the emissions. However, other gases such as methane or nitrous oxide contribute to global warming. To make sure we talk about the same things, all these greenhouse gases are converted into one common unit of measure, which is carbon dioxide. So that's why very often we talk about CO2e, which is carbon dioxide equivalent. So by how much has the Earth's average temperature increased over the past century? 1.2 degrees, 1.5 degrees, or 2 degrees? degrees. Okay, so it feels very little, but actually, if we look at the period of time, it's quite dramatic. In a typical business, where do most of the CO2e emissions come from? Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, or you don't know what I'm talking about? Okay, so it's Scope 3. Okay, so Scope 1 is all your direct emissions. Scope 2, emissions coming from the energy you purchase. Scope 3, indirect emissions. And in a typical business, your Scope 3 emission would be 80% of your CO2 emissions. So Paris Agreement, we all hear a lot about this Paris Agreement. What is the goal of the Paris Agreement? Is it to reduce global warming to pre-industrial levels, to limit global warmings to well below 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, or to limit global warming to well below 5 degrees above pre-industrial levels? Okay, so well done, most of you. It's limit global warming to well below 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. So we'll talk about the Paris Agreement later on in the presentations. It's a really important concept. It's something we all need to understand why and what actions are coming out of it. And last question, has your business SBTi approved sustainability target? Yes, no, or in progress? Okay, thanks a lot. So I think there is a good mix of people in the room. I'm not going to dive too much into the details. We don't have much time to talk about this complex topic. So let's start with global warming, understanding its causes and effect. Okay, so when we talk about global warming, we are talking about human-induced global warming. If you look in the history of Earth, there's always been changes in temperature. But in this context, we talk about human activity contributing to global warming. So human activity has been increasing for the past 150 years. Humans have been burning fossil fuels, releasing greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. These gases are trapping heat on Earth, and the temperature of Earth is increasing. So if you look at Earth 20,000 years ago during the last ice age, you could see a lot of ice. 20,000 years later, temperature increased by 5 degrees. It's a very different landscape. And if we continue on the current trend, in 100 years, the Earth could be 5 degrees hotter than it is today. So as I said, there's been changes of temperature. What's a little bit alarming currently is the Earth's temperature is warming up 20 times faster than it's been in the past. So I would like to share with you a few graphs. So this graph is showing the global populations for the past 10,000 years. And you can see the trend. This one is showing the world energy use for the past 150 years, okay? And all these big chunks are fossil fuels, so gas, coal, petrol. And I think if we put this on the same scale as this graph, it will follow exactly the same trend. So this one is showing the annual CO2 emissions in the world, okay? And this one is showing the evolutions of the Earth's temperature. So 20,000 years ago, it went up, it went down, it went up. And this is the projections of the increase of the temperature. So you can see some commonality between all these graphs. So 20,000 years ago, sea levels were 120 meters lower than today. Okay, now we all hear about global warming, changes in temperature. We can all hear about the glacier meltings, more frequent and severe weather events. What happens if Earth is going to warm up by an extra 5 degrees? What would happen to Greenland? A lot of continents could be flooded. There will be severe disruptions to food and water supplies, conflicts over resources. So there are many possibilities which would have a severe impact on Earth. Okay, so this is the basic of global warming in the context of these presentations. So why it's important for business and supply chain to have a sustainability strategy? So first, it can bring a brand and competitive advantage. Okay, so having a clear sustainability strategy is going to be an incentive for consumers to buy your product. It can be an incentive to recruit talented people. If you push this a little bit further, not having any strategy or not caring about the environment could be detrimental to your business. People would not want to buy your products. People would not want to work for your company. We need to talk also about regulatory compliance. So governments worldwide are developing policies to act against global warming. So Europe is doing a number of regulations guided by the Paris Agreement. I'm sure you all heard about the European deforestation regulations. UK forest risk commodity regulations is going to happen at some point. Plastic tax, and so on and so forth. So there's going to be a lot of law. Not abiding to this law will result in fines, legal actions, reputational damage. So it's going to be a legal requirement at some point. Customers have expectations too. So all the customers, if you go on any Aldi, Tesco, Sainsbury website, they all are making very clear sustainability commitment. And if we want to do business with these guys, we need to be aligned with them. Okay, so not having a sustainability strategy or not being aligned with your customers could be a showstopper. So cost efficiency, sustainability can be good for the bottom line. You can do a lot of actions in your business to reduce your carbon footprint, optimizing your route to market, improve the pallet height, improve vehicle fills. So these actions can reduce your carbon footprint, and they can also improve your bottom lines. And last but not least, so we saw, talking about global warming, the impact it could have on Earth. We work in supply chain. I think we all felt the effect of COVID, war in Ukraine, Brexit, Suez Canal crisis. If you think about it, these were small, isolated incidents with a short time scale. So try to imagine the impact, the effect of a global climate collapse on your supply chain. It will be a completely different ballgame. So we talked about global warming. We understand why it's important. Let's talk now about carbon footprint and try to understand where it's coming from, what can you do about it, how can you measure it. So during the quiz, I was asking about scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, and these are very important concepts to understand. So scope 1 typically would be 10% of the emissions of a company. So these are all the direct emissions coming from your own control source. So if you got a factory, smoke coming out of your factory will be your scope 1. And there are a lot of things one can do to reduce scope 1. So we can reduce our energy consumptions, we can increase energy efficiency, switch from fossil fuels to renewable alternatives. So some principles and examples we've been doing in the Lactalis group. So first of all, we are guided by 3 principles: sobriety, efficiency, and transition to low-carbon energy. We've got a big site in Canada, a big cheese factory. We replace the boiler by a more efficient boiler. It reduces the emission by 6%. Our colleagues in Serbia did a big piece of work on route to market, on vehicle field optimizations. It reduced their carbon footprint by 7%. Okay, so scope 2, typically 10 to 20% of your footprint these are the emissions associated to the energy you purchase. So if all the electricity you purchase is produced in a coal plant, it will have a big impact. If it's produced by solar panels or wind, it will be much lower. So scope 2 example for Lactalis, they've been doing a big piece of work in France, working in partnership with New Heat, renewable energy suppliers. And they are installing the biggest solar thermal plant in France to heat the water. That's going to enable them to run a site in Verdun. And this is resulting by 1,500 tons of CO2 reductions, 5% of the emissions. So you can see some small, very specific actions can have a very big impact on your emissions. Okay, on scope 3, so scope 3 is a tricky one. So usually it's going to be between 70 and 90% of your emissions. And this is the emissions you don't directly control because they come from your suppliers. They come up in the value chain. They come from purchase goods and service, business travel, waste disposal, transportation and distribution if you work with the 3PL, on everything coming from forest, land, and agriculture. So I don't have any specific example to give you for scope 3, but I'll talk to you about guiding principles. What we are doing at Lactalis in order to work with our supplier for scope 3 is first to raise their awareness, to make sure they have a climate strategy, work with them to share best practice and see what we can do to influence decarbonization, monitor their progress, and strengthen collaboration with suppliers. So I was telling earlier that if we want to work with Tesco, Sainsbury, Aldi, we must have a sustainability strategy. To work with us, our supplier must have a strategy as well. Okay? Let's talk now about targets. So setting the right targets, the importance of strategic and realistic goals. So first I need to talk about greenwashing. You all heard about greenwashing, making some fancy claims, trying to look greener than green in order to have a competitive advantage, brand advantage. I think some companies could get away with it maybe 5-10 years ago, not anymore. Now everyone is under scrutiny. Anyone is being looked at by the customers and the consumers. And I think any greenwashing claims can backfire pretty badly, actually. So let's go back to the Paris Agreement I talked about at the beginning of the presentation. So the goal of the Paris Agreement is to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Okay? So we saw what's going to happen if the Earth go up by 5 degrees. We know that currently the Earth is 1.2 degrees hotter, warmer than 27 years ago. So the goal of this Paris is to try to do some damage control and limit it to 2 degrees. So all this is based on science. Scientifics making regular reports to guide countries in order to do regulations. And what come out of all this report is if we manage to get net zero by the end of the century, we'll be able to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. Okay, so this is our carbon emissions worldwide. If we manage to reduce them radically, we'll be able to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. If we manage to reduce our emissions a little bit less radically, we would limit warming to 2 degrees. If we stop doing and stay flat, the Earth's temperature could increase by 2.2, 3.5 degrees. And if we carry on as we do, I don't know. So in order to have realistic targets need to be aligned to the Paris Agreement, and business need to have some strategy in place to be net zero by 2050. And this is where SBTi is coming into play. So SBTi, it's a science-based target initiative. It's an NGO, global body, who's helping the business to set some realistic targets and to make sure the business has the right strategy to deliver these targets. So they define and promote best practice. Everything is backed by France, and it's a collaboration between a number of NGOs such as UN Global Compact, WWF, etc. So in order to get a science-based target initiative, the first step would be to engage with SBTi and tell them, okay, I want to commit to have targets in line with the Paris Agreement. Then SBTi and the company would work together on a credible plan to reduce the carbon targets. Targets will be submitted to the SBTi for official validations. When SBTi validates your target, it's important to communicate about it. And then every year to do some reporting to make sure this is our target, this is what we're doing about it, are we on track, yes or no. So Group Lactalis went through this journey. All our targets were SBTi approved last year. And this is what our strategy, what our roadmap looks like, so a number of milestones. So this year we should be deforestation free. By 2028, 75% of our suppliers will have SBTi targets. With a number of actions, and ultimately by 2050, we should be net zero. Okay, so we talked about global warming, importance of sustainability. I think we all understand a bit more about carbon footprint now. We know that targets, if you want to have targets, let's be serious about it and have some science-based target. Let's talk about change now. And I think change, it's really important to realize that we all have individuals and collective roles to play on this topic. So everyone in the organization, from the boardroom to at every level in the organization, has a role in driving sustainability. So it's really important to encourage in your company a culture of environmental responsibility. And there are a few ways you can do it. And I think the first one, the most important one, is education. On educating your employees, provide them training on resource on sustainability practice. I don't know if any of you heard about the FRESC training. It's a very powerful tool. A lot of companies are rolling this training in companies. It educates employees on global warming, the cause and effect, but most importantly, it gives every employee some tools to take some individual and business actions to influence greenhouse gas emissions. So it's also important to empower your team, encourage them to work together, to find initiatives. There is no small or big initiatives. Anything you can do to reduce the carbon footprint is worth doing. And then, it's always good to recognize contributions, celebrate success, and make sure you make noise about all the best practice and initiatives that can happen in your company. So a few examples we did in UK. A few years ago, we did a massive project, a Waves project. That was a route-to-market optimizations using latest technology, EDI. We managed to reduce our carbon footprint by 92 tons a year. We made some bottom line saving as well, so Planet is happy, finance director is happy. We did a few years ago Project Lego, which was an exercise to look at the palletizations of all our products, see what we could do to optimize it. There were a lot of low-hanging fruits. And it's always important to challenge the status quo questions, why things are done this way. Can we do it differently? Do we need this packaging? Can we change this? Can we change that? And I think by having this culture of challenging the status quo can drive a lot of improvements at all levels in the organization. So we covered all this in 20 minutes, actually. So I think my conclusion today is global warming is happening. So some people don't think it's linked to human activities. Nevertheless, we can all see heat waves, wildfires, extreme weather events, they are happening. ESG is becoming central to business strategies. I think in the past, it could have been a marketing argument, not anymore. Now it's a business requirement. It's important for the companies to understand where their carbon footprint is coming from, so they can get some science-backed goals. And it's down to us to make some change at individual level and at company level. On all of us in this room, I think we all have some senior levels. We've got the power to make individual change, but also to bring change in the boardroom. Okay, so my last final word is every action matters. There is no small or big actions. Every bit of warming matters. Every year matters. Every choice matters. And I think you're all familiar with this meme. You must have seen it somewhere. So who do you want to be? Do you want change? Do you want to change? Do you want to lead change? It's your choice. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Yes?
I love the way that you've laid it out. I mean, the first few slides are very in your... Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I love the way... Is that on?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. I love the way that you've laid it out, the first few slides. You can't be like galvanized behind wanting to make a change from that. Can you tell us about any of the internal challenges that you've had to get maybe the resources behind projects and things like that, particularly in the initial stages?
So talking really genuinely about my company, Group Lactalis, if you look 5-10 years ago, sustainability was really low on the agenda. It went up. It went up, and there's been a huge support from the owner of Group Lactalis, Emmanuel Beignet, top management in the company. They are behind it. They are leading it. They are leading the change, and make sure everyone in the organization is behind it. So they went a little bit from Donald Trump to Greta Thunberg in a couple of years, and having this support at senior level to drive this strategy, putting some teams in place, some resources in place, made it really easy. I was talking about risk training, and this is great because when you talk about global warming to people, it can always be a divisive topic. And some people, it's a scam. People are exaggerating. There's always been heat waves. Climate has always been changing. So having this tool to educate the employee of the reality, looking at global warming from a scientific perspective, understand cause and effects and what can we do about it, is a very powerful tool to make sure everybody at all levels understands the importance of this topic. Yes?
So your target for 2050 net zero, where do you think you will be by the implementation?
I think so. I think we are still waiting for the Lactalis progress report for what's been achieved last year. I was in France last week talking with their team. I think France managed to reduce all the scope 1 and 2 by 15% in 1 year. So currently there are a lot of big, chunky actions put in place. Our biggest challenge is going to work with our Scope 3 emissions, with the suppliers, but the work is in motion. You know, if everybody is doing this bit, I think we'll get there by 2050. I really hope so. Yes?
That's a great presentation. Great. Thanks. Great presentation. Have you had any other synergies with other manufacturers or other partner providers or competitors? Because I see a lot happening individually inside businesses, but how does that branch out to be multi-effective, I guess?
So we saw this happening in some countries, not directly on carbon emission, but my company is making yogurts. Okay, and a big challenge we have is with the packaging. So most of the yogurts are made of a PS, polystyrene, which is not recyclable. You cannot recycle it. And France and Spain created some task force between Danone, Yoplait, Lactalis, and a lot of competitors. So there was very strong governance in place to make sure they were not going to breach any competitive law. And together, they managed to develop a recycling facility for PS yogurts in Spain and France. Yes?
Thank you. It's actually to come back to the question the lady at the end asked earlier around how you're getting towards reaching your targets. You mentioned that Scope 3, specifically the suppliers, is where you're getting a bit of a challenge. For us, I think that would be a huge challenge. To get suppliers to commit to the targets that we want to set. Have you found that you might have to change suppliers because they are unwilling or unable to meet those targets in time? Or would you relax the target? What would be the...
I think we've got a very, very specific and very clear roadmap. And I think by 2028, 2/3 of our suppliers must have some target in place. So it will become a decision factor to decide who we want to work with and who we don't want to work with.
Can you maybe talk around some of the kind of hidden costs associated that people may not be aware of? So carbon taxes,
yes.
EPR, developing costs on packaging. So the climate isn't in a great state. Nature's not in a great state. But and even if you don't want to save the world, there's also a lot of very sound business reasons in terms of cost
yes.
to go in this direction.
So I think, playing with your packaging, you can reduce plastic, you can reduce consumptions, you can also make some financial savings. For example, we worked with our pots to reduce the thickness of the pots. It's something we managed to achieve without compromising the product. That's a saving. We sell a lot of big pots. They used to have a plastic caps. We decided to get rid of the plastic caps. Same. It's not impacting the product. It's making a difference. And then, plastic tax. Yeah, it's happening. I think it's something like 200 pounds per tons per plastics. When you start taxing business on what they do, business can become really creative to find solutions.
A lot of these costs are kind of hidden. They're hidden in operations. People may not be aware of the type of costs that are already paid on packaging, for example. In Europe, packaging taxes that are, we pay those costs in our businesses. We may not be fully aware of how much we're paying at the moment.
So there are a lot of hidden costs. And as business, you need to make sure, how are you going to mitigate this cost? Improving your route to market, making some savings on the other part of the business could mitigate this cost. Okay? So I think we're 13 minutes early. You can all enjoy a coffee, network, have a chat before lunch. If you want to talk to me, don't hesitate. It's been a pleasure to present to you. Thank you very much.